Hello guys, and welcome to another Divinity Original Sin video. This is going to be the Ranger slash Huntsman advanced guide inside of a 4-man party based around physical damage. Hands are cold. It's been a while since I actually played the game. I've been a little bit burnt out with the game for a while, to be honest, and I've just been feeding out content here and there, but here I'm doing one of the things that I really wanted to do. Let's do some advanced guides, because one thing I am seeing a lot of is people kind of like struggling with the game, and I'm thinking this may be maybe a good source for learning. And who better do it with Cranley Hubert? Anyway, so first question is, what is the best race to play? A ranger? I think before you answer that question, you need to decide your party focus, who's the classes in the party, and then you can sort of put the pieces of the puzzle in place from there. So how I typically like to set up my physical parties is a ranger, a two-handed warrior, a necromancer, and then you can either go a summoner or a rogue. I personally prefer the summoner. So once you've nailed down the roles, then you need to put the characters in place. I think elves make the best necromancers. Elves make the best necromancers because of the synergy with the flesh sacrifice. And then if you're doing a custom elf as your... I think a custom elf makes the best summoner as well, which kind of leaves vacant role. And for me, Thane fills that role magnificently. Lots of benefits for Thane being your ranger: the crit chance, the crit modifier, and time warp. Time warp when anything's stronger in itself. But seeing that the elves are already... roles are taking place, Thane just suits in naturally to take the ranger role for me. So I would say Thane is the best, and if you really just want to play an elf as a ranger, that can work as well, but I think it's better suited elsewhere. So in terms of your attributes, where you should be focusing your attribute points, it's very simple. You just maximize your finesse. That is what's going to increase your damage, and you don't really need to worry about anything else. For the most parts, you're going to be keeping your memory at 10. You're not really going to be putting any points into it. And wits, for the most part, is your second stat increase after you've maximized your finesse. You don't need to worry about strength. You don't need to worry about constitution. You don't need to worry about intelligence. In terms of your school skills, general rule is you fill the odd points where you need for the miscellaneous skills, but as you can see from my personal build, it really doesn't extend too far. Notable early ones is Scoundrel 1 point for the adrenaline, and maybe a Geo point for the venom coating. Aside from that, you're really just going to be focusing on your damaging school skills. And the priority with this is, there is, again, for me, there's a general rule of thumb, but there can be exceptions. For example, in order for you to do most damage, you are best putting points into Warfare and Huntsman at a 1-to-1. That would increase your damage the most. However, this doesn't really matter in my eyes. I personally would recommend Warfare Max first, Huntsman you would only put 1 or 2 points in to reach the skills early on. So the reason why I would recommend Warfare before the Huntsman is because I play with Enrage. Enrage means guaranteed crits. Maxed Warfare crits will do more damage than Warfare and Huntsman split crits. Also, there's the thing to take into consideration that Warfare is applied everywhere. Huntsman is only applied on high ground. So for me, every argument for Warfare over the split wins every single time. So firstly, you'll be wanting to put all your points into Warfare, and then Huntsman, then Scoundrel. Something to think about is most of the time you're going to have high ground. So it makes more sense to have Huntsman. But it's situational, even though for me it happened, you're able to get that situation more often. Scoundrel is consistent in that it's always going to add that critical multiplier and doesn't need you to be on high ground. But if you're able to get your ideal circumstances more often than not, it makes more sense to be running Huntsman over Scoundrel. So, to cap, Warfare first, then Huntsman, then Scoundrel, after Ranged. In terms of your talent points, throughout the game you're going to be like changing here and there anyway, but the Ranger is really, really, really simple as far as I'm concerned. The best talent point to begin with is Glass Cannon. Glass Cannon gives you 6 AP from the beginning. Now, as you can see, there is a negative effect that you can be crowd controlled much more easily. However, if you're playing very well in crowd controlling every turn or killing, this really shouldn't be a problem. So really, you should and could be getting maximum AP at no negative effect, as long as you're playing correctly. So for me, Glass Cannon will always be your first talent point. The second talent point will be going Executioner. For kills, you're getting your 2 extra action points, extending your turn, extending your damage. When you hit level 8, I would most definitely be looking at getting Water Rush. Water Rush adds 1 AP as long as you're below 50%. So you'll be starting fights below 50% HP. You want to avoid Necromancer so you don't end up gaining HP from your attacks and you can maintain Water Rush. And also when you apply Death Wish as well, the lower your HP, the more damage you're going to be doing. It all comes into effect quite beautifully, and yeah, it's quite brilliant. Death Wish with 1 HP, you're doing 99% increased damage, and then obviously you're getting extra AP from Water Rush. The Water Rush AP is applied immediately because you are using Glass Cannon. Typically, if you're using Water Rush, you start off with the standard 4 AP, and then after your first round, you'll then start gaining the Water Rush talent. But if you're doing it with Glass Cannon, you seem to start with 7. As you can see, the action point's 7. So those would be the first 3 talent points. After, at level 13, depends on the state of the game, but how I would look at it is this, is if you are using if you can use the free memory from Mnemonic, and then you can apply the three attribute points to Finesse, it's worth doing. Free Finesse is going to be better than all skilled up. If you are not able to make use of the memory or the finesse, just go all skilled up. Reason being, it adds more damage, and if you look at everything else, the options aren't that great. Now, some people might argue Hothead. For this way of building, I wouldn't be using Hothead simply because I'm playing with Death Wish, I'm playing with Water Rush, which requires me to be below 50%, which conflicts with what you need for Hothead. And we don't need the critical because, like I said, Enrage is giving us 100% chance. So really, outside of these four, nothing really else is adding like a lot of damage. Of course, with the exception of Mnemonic if you're getting finesse instead of those memory points. So that is how I would apply the first 4 talent points. At level 18, you get the 5th talent point. There really isn't that much in terms of options. And of course, all of this now at this point isn't so impactful. You can look at bigger and better, but we're already max finesse. And we're using Enrage. 2 points into it isn't that big of a deal. But it's an option. You could also go Elemental Range is a trap. Avoid this. You don't need to be picking this up. I would say Far Out Man is probably something you can seriously consider in the 5th slot. Hothead I've already touched on. Mnemonic I've already touched on. Picture of Health, you don't need health if you're not taking damage. Torture, very, very little to no effect really in this kind of party. So for me, like it just becomes redundant at a certain point. In terms of the gear itself, you're going to be looking for points with pieces of gear with finesse, wits, critical chance, ranged, scoundrel, huntsman, warfare, not in any particular order, but those are the kind of things that you're going to be looking for. So just going over some of the gear here, as you can see, there's finesse, huntsman on here, wits, finesse, huntsman, scoundrel on this piece, finesse and huntsman, finesse, memory plus spout, 7th finesse, again 3 finesse for huntsman and ranged. Though this weapon is on here for show more than anything else, it wouldn't really work in this build because it's got plenty. It's got 20% life steal, and like I've already said, I want to avoid life steal because of how I want to build and set up. 2 finesse, warfare, scoundrel. Warfare, huntsman, scoundrel. Warfare, huntsman, scoundrel. And again, on the legs, we got some huntsmen here. So that is typically how you're going to be looking to build. I've not really focused on critical chance here because I am sticking with the enraged. So as you can see, we have a whopping 84 at level 16, which is which I would say would be considerably high. So the skills that I'm currently set up here in the late game with, we have Enrage. Enrage is going to be a staple of your build for a very long time, from level 4 right up to at least level 16. And then I would say Peace of Mind is a consideration because it does scale the more levels that you get, so it does become stronger as time goes on. We have Challenge, Tactical Retreat, Elemental Arrowheads, Ricochet, Barrage, Marksman's Fang, Ballistic Shot, Sky Shot, Assassinate, Venom Coating, Adrenaline, Skin Graft from the item, and then we have the innate specials of Thane. So the best way to apply these skills in combat, so some little sort of tips and tricks that I can think of right now off the top of my head. Enrage, obviously you want to be using this after you use your spells in terms of your own setup. Like I said, you want to be using this from level 4 right to level 16. And it's even more impactful because we are running Glass Cannon. We are running Executioner, which means more attacks. The Enrage, because it applies 100% crits, the more we do, the more damage we do. The more attacks we do, the more damage we do in comparison to just having the extra AP to do an attack, but without the 100% chance to crit. Basically, what I'm saying is that Enrage, the build with Enrage will do more damage than a build without Enrage. Especially if you're using Executioner, which you should be doing anyway, and Glass Cannon. The more basics you get off, the more impactful and more damage increase you'll see. Best way to use Challenge. I mean, the safest ways to use it is like when the enemy's low and you know for sure that you're going to get kills, but you kind of get an idea of how much damage your characters can do at some point. So you can apply this early and just get free extra damage pretty much. Just a few things to be mindful of with using Challenge though is that it does override other challenges. And if you are decaying and then you kill the challenged target, you can end up killing yourself, so just be careful about that. Not really much to be said about tactical retreat. Most of the time that you are going to be in position from the beginning of fight, so you won't really be using this. Though on the rare occasion where you do need this from the beginning, it's there on the bar, and sometimes you might need to jump into a new position, which is a little bit difficult if you're trying to use them in Rage, but for the most part, you're going to be in position from the beginning. Elemental Arrowheads. Now, something to note with Elemental Arrowheads is that you can use this with any surface, but the best surface to be using this with is blood. Reason why is because, as you can see here, typically you're going to be putting points into warfare, so there's going to be a lot more points. And as you can see, just for an example here, we have 1 point into Hydra Surface. Now, if we had a blood surface and a water puddle, if you dip the arrows in the blood, it will have more of a buff in terms of damage than the water puddle. That's because it scales off of the school skills. So for example, if you had fire and a water puddle here, because they both have 1 point, it will add the same amount of damage. Ricochet and Barrage are bread and butter skills, something that you're going to be using quite a lot. It gives you a very rare AoE ability for a Huntsman, so this is very important. But there's a number of things that I really like about the Barrage and the Ricochet abilities, is that you can use the Ricochet on, let's say for example, there is a enemy over there, we don't have line of sight, but there's a corpse here. We could use Ricochet on the corpse and then hit the enemy. You can do this with your teammates, and you can do this with totems. And that brings me on to another reason why I love these two skills, is that I can do damage to the enemy, I can kill the totem, trigger Executioner, and do damage to the enemy at the same time. Barrage, slightly different. You can use 1 arrow to kill the totem, and then you can fling 2 arrows at the enemy, triggering Execution. Or you can use it to be more efficient in terms of your damage. You can spread it out, you can set up your teammates upcoming for kills. There's a number of things that you can do with these two skills. It's really, really useful. But the main thing is that it can extend your turn. by killing totems. Marksman Fang is a little bit of a tricky one to use, but it is best used with Skin Graft. Now, for the most part, my experience is that if you were just to use Marksman Fang by itself, it's not really going to kill an enemy. However, if you do Marksman Fang and then Skin Graft, you're going to get 2 of them off. Most of the time that is going to kill off a singular target. You can get this to hit multiple targets, but it's quite tricky. But the best use of it is with Skin Graft. Ballistic shots. This is pretty self-explanatory, and this is something you should naturally be doing anyway. Getting on high ground. High ground gives you extra range gives you extra damage with ballistic shot. So obviously you want to be using that in the best way possible. Sky shot is something that's a little bit more difficult. Well, not difficult to use, but you won't be using it very often, because more often than not you're going to get the high ground and you're going to maintain the high ground. So it's not really going to see a lot of use, but for those times that where for whatever reason they are on the same level as you, this will allow you to attack them with the bonuses from high ground. So what this means is that typically you're going to be maxing your warfare in the early game and have very little points in Huntsman. You're not really going to be using sky shots. However, later in the game it becomes more relevant, and it becomes more relevant because you're going to have a lot more points in the Huntsman. So it does make bigger impact for when you are in these rare situations. As for Assassinate, you pick this up very, very late in the game. Best way to use Assassinate is pre-combat. You stealth up and then you shoot at the target. You get an extra 50% damage whilst stealthed or sneaking. And it takes a whopping 3 AP, so hence why I think it's the best time to use it is before combat. Venom Coating. There's times you're going to be using it and there's times that you're not. And it very much depends on it very much depends on the amount of AP and what you have to do at the time. You can use this very, very early, but I think it's way more impactful in as a magic archer, because you are consistently using your special arrows every single time. Whereas the problem with the physical archer is that it applies poison, but if the focus is physical, it's basically empty damage on these skills, which is why I say there's times that you're going to use it and there's times that you're not going to be using it. There's something else that I'm going to be speaking about on it a little bit later. Adrenaline, self-explanatory, is basically part of every single build. Skin Graft isn't something a Huntsman actually needs, but because of the items that I got, etc., it allows me to have Skin Graft without actually losing any damage. What I mean by that is that I don't need to put 3 points into Polymorph, I can have 3 points into Huntsman instead. So again, something to think about. Play Dead is basically an aggro drop. It doesn't require me to have Chameleon Cloak, though I think Chameleon Cloak is really, really good. It's broken, in fact, but we don't actually need it. It's something that I've experienced and played as. And then we have Time Warp. Time Warp is pretty broken. It allows a character to have another turn. And there's something really, really clever about this, which is something I've never seen anyone speak about. So this might be really good for you to listen to. So when using Time Warp, you can use it on teammates, but it's such short range and you're on high ground, mostly by yourself. Most of the time you are going to be using it on yourself, and it makes the most sense to do that for most of the time, to be honest. So this is why it's really, really good. So let's say typical setup, we use elemental arrowheads, we use venom coating, that puts us down to 4 AP. We use adrenaline, 6 AP, we use enrage, time warp, and then we auto attack, get a kill, then we auto attack again. Then it's our turn again, but we're down to 4 AP because we used adrenaline. Now, if you skip your turn and then it comes back around to your turn, you will be at max AP again. So it nullifies. It doesn't even read that you've used adrenaline. So really what you want to do is on your first turn, you take your turn, you time warp yourself. On the second turn, you delay, you'll be at max AP again. That is pretty awesome. Really, really awesome. So one thing I've not actually touched on yet is the venom coating. So I said a little bit earlier about how applying it to your weapons, but it's not very effective when it's applied to your skills because it doesn't turn the poison damage into physical. That's a problem. However, the solution for that is using slowdown arrows. Very underused. I don't really see a lot of people talking or using them in their runs, and they really should be if they're doing a physical party. So it becomes less of a thing later in the game, but it's really important early mid game. Now, what does it do for you? So you use your elemental arrowheads on the surface, you venom coats, and then you would use your slowdown arrow. Now what this does is converts all the elemental damage into physical. That's why venom coating is a lot more prevalent on a physical archer, because of the slowdown arrows. But that's not always the case. So a lot of the fights require you to approach them differently at times. So from levels 1 to 8, you will have glass cannon and executioner. Oh no, sorry. From levels 1 to 7, you'll have glass cannon and executioner. So you'll have your 6 AP. So what you're going to be wanting to do most of the time, elemental arrowheads to surface, venom coating, that puts you at 4 AP. Your adrenaline for 6 AP, you enrage, you either use time warp. Basically, you're a rounded amount of AP to use your slowdown arrows. Or if you see fit, you can use elemental arrowheads plus barrage. So you don't always have to use venom coating. Sometimes, like the Lady Vengeance fights, for example, you will want to jump onto the high ground to begin with. So if you've gone with my build, you're say level 8 or 9, you have Water Rush, you have Glass Cannon Executioner. So you tactical retreat, that gives you 6 AP. Do you have a surface for elemental arrowheads, or did you at the beginning use it? Venom coating, use it. That puts you again at flat AP. So then you're able to go about your day. So basically, you are using the buffs where you can. Your gameplay changes if you need to use tactical retreats. Ask yourself, do you need the extra damage from barrage? Do I need to use barrage to kill a totem? Can I use barrage to extend my damage on an enemy. If you don't need to do any of those necessarily, you can just revert back to the slowdown arrows, get the kill, extend your turn. There's a number of different combinations, but with this setup, you've got all the tools that you need to make the right decisions in each situation, which I've already just touched upon. So some situations, it makes sense to only use elemental arrowheads. Sometimes it makes sense to use the elemental arrowheads and venom coating. Sometimes you're required to jump. So it really depends on each situation, but all of these tools give you the choice to make the right decisions with. So how I like to build is 1 HP. This increases the damage of Death Wish. Do not have Necromancer because that's going to heal, which is going to reduce your damage. So you have 1 HP. So Death Wish, 99% damage. And while the rush is being triggered, you've got your 6 AP from Glass Cannon. You're getting 2 AP a turn because of Executioner. Increased damage from all skilled up. And then maybe increased range at level 18 from Far Out Man. So like I've said, keep your memory as low as possible. Sky Shot is something that you're going to be wanting to pick up later in the game, because you're trying to keep your memory as flat as possible. Sky Shot's not always going to be an option early on, but it becomes more relevant later. Some other little tips that I can give you in terms of runes later in the game. The 3 finesse runes are going to be stronger than the 1 warfare, so make sure you plug your rune slots with those. And when it comes to the weapon, the 3 wits and 15% damage increase will lead to more damage than, say, 3 finesse rune, so just be mindful of that. So if you need examples of gameplay, there is plenty of videos on my channel that takes on a lot of the tactician challenges being severely underleveled, which you know, you're more than welcome to take a look at in terms of how to play the roles and classes themselves. So be sure to check them out. Any other sort of like information that comes to mind, I'll probably just add it in the comments, so be sure to keep your eye out for that. But other than that, guys, that's it from me. Hope you enjoy, and Rivendell will be a safer place having watched this video. So anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys in the next one.